This is the Demystifying Mental Toughness podcast, hosted by David Charlton, and you're listening to this podcast to help you build your own mental toughness, so that you can support other people or your clients better. Either way, you will learn more about developing this plastic personality trait that all but guarantees that you will perform better and lead a more prosperous life. Hi, and welcome back to the Demystifying Mental Toughness podcast with your host, David Charlton. And in today's episode, it involves a deep and insightful conversation where a number of topics are broached, including the life and challenges of being a professional footballer in the women's game. We talk about discrimination, mental health, and the power of mindfulness too. One thing to note, towards the end of the recording, we do get a little bit interrupted by a dog. The dog in question is barking a little bit, and there's some background noises. Hopefully it won't spoil the enjoyment of the podcast episode for you. Hi, Charlotte. So, welcome to the Demystifying Mental Toughness podcast. It's been a while since we first spoke, so it's great to finally get you on the show. Would you like to tell the listeners a little bit more about your background and your passion for football at first?
Hi, David. Yeah, thanks for having me on the podcast. Passion for football, where do I start? I've basically played since I was 5 years old for my mum and dad's grassroots club. That was a boys' club. And then I played boys' football up until I was about 15 years old. I played until I was 15 for the school. But club-wise, I had to transition when I was like 11 or 12. And I didn't really want to, I must be honest. And then from there, I've sort of went on to play for Newcastle Centre of Excellence. And then I went to Sunderland as soon as I turned 16. And it's been a bit of a roller coaster with Sunderland, I won't lie, because I've had a lot of battles with mental health, which has sent me all over the world. I've went to travel. I've took time out from playing. I even decided to reject a full-time offer with Sunderland when I was 21 to take a year and a half out and go and coach in America. And it was probably the best thing for me, to be honest, because I seen the game in a completely different light. I used to use football as almost like when I was growing up playing football, I used to put myself in a little bit of a fantasy world and take myself out of the world that I lived in and just used football as a distraction. So after I stopped playing football and I went back after coaching, it sort of allowed me to use everything that I've experienced in life to understand the game more. If you think of football like a game of chess, right? I forced myself to understand the boards, to understand the pieces, especially myself, and all of the moves in great detail as well. And be that leader on the pitch rather than just a person.
Do you want to tell the listeners a little bit more about those younger life experiences and how football worked to help you in that respect?
Well, obviously my family have been massively invested in football, and I talked about my mum and dad having a grassroots club. But my mum was extremely brave, despite being quite a popular figure in our community, and she came out gay when I was very young. And I was probably still a little bit too young to understand. I understood a little bit, but not. I didn't experience anything dramatic like my brother did. My brother was a teenager at the time, and he played for the football club too. So that just completely split our family in half. And my brother went to live with my dad. I lived with my mum. We actually stayed with my cousin in my cousin's house, me and my mum, for a while until we got our own council property in between living with my nana as well. But my brother always had a lot of hate and resentment for that because he got bullied a lot for it. So that was an early experience. And I almost felt very protective of my mum. I thought it was extremely brave what she would do, but you know how discrimination is. Sometimes people are a bit uncomfortable with the subject. So people used to like laugh and mock and call her a man. And I mean, as horrible as it is, I used to even join in with that, which if I think now, like, that's pretty awful. But delving deep into like understanding discrimination as I've got older, how to challenge it the right way. Because if someone, say a close friend of mine, was to laugh and joke about her being like a man, I would laugh along too. But if someone who I like sensed was being a little bit of a bully, like, that would trigger anger and I would react. And I'll be honest, I would use my fists. And I'd done that for a long time, up until I was a teenager. And it impacted the way I used to play on the pitch, because I used to play like driven through aggression. So yeah, like, there's been a lot of lessons from that.
What sort of lessons have you learned then?
How to communicate properly, how to challenge discrimination, self-awareness. Sometimes if you feel uncomfortable, just take a minute to be mindful of why you're feeling uncomfortable before you say anything, before you behave in any way that's going to be damaging to other people.
I know you do some work with Show Racism the Red Card as well.
Mm.
Do you think times have changed a little bit and we are moving in the right direction when it comes down to discrimination, certainly in football anyway?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes to try to educate, but honestly, I think unless you've been in the situation yourself and you've reflected on the experiences, I think it's very hard to understand. Say, for example, you're in a room and you've got a speaker, and they're speaking about things that you've not sort of like come across. You can't really relate and you can't really understand deeply the subject. But if you go in a room and the speaker is speaking about things and you're like, whoa, like, I've experienced this. So as much as there's so much education around the subject, I think there needs to be more curiosity.
Yeah, I can. I'm putting myself in the shoes of the speaker. Sometimes I find with like our role as a sports psychologist, often in a team setting, you can basically, I suppose, 5% of the players want to be there often, and 95% don't, and they aren't curious to the mental side of sports. So I suppose there's similarities there in that respect. I don't know. Do you agree or disagree with that one?
No, I agree. And I think, obviously, I've talked about my experiences with my childhood, but even going into my teenage years, and I've experienced other types of discrimination where now, as I've got a bit older, I can sit in a room with probably multiple speakers and I can relate to different types of speakers because I've come across different experiences in life. And I think if you're that type of person sitting there and if you can't relate, maybe, I don't know if you agree with me here, but there's a lot of people who fear going into the situation that makes them uncomfortable, which therefore makes them not be able to relate or empathise with other people. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, fear is definitely a strong emotion, and that was, I don't know if emotion's the right word, but it's a strong feeling which can stop people. It might be an age thing as well. Obviously, in we're talking football here, then you might have a dressing room with a lot of people in their like late teens, come early 20s, and maybe don't have the life experiences that allow them to actually appreciate what's going on too, or the self-awareness as well. I don't know. I think from my work, I notice in there, I think once people get us towards their 30s, early 30s, I mean, there are some outliers, then there's, sometimes that self-awareness is pretty abysmal, in all honesty.
Yeah.
In terms of mental toughness, how would you define that when it comes down to, professional football?
When it comes to mental toughness, I think I always think of pain. Don't know why. If there's something that brings a certain type of pain or a barrier, something that puts in a block for you moving forward, and you need a certain type of character, certain characteristics to get past that barrier, to get past that pain. And if you're not willing to push through it, then you're lacking in that mental toughness.
So in some ways it is, in your mind, it is like sort of dealing with obstacles, setbacks, challenges, and pressure, if you like. And as you say, trying to cope with it and deal with it. Again, I suppose we're generalising a little bit here, or I am anyway. I think sometimes the younger person is a little bit frightened to think about setbacks maybe happening and challenges and stuff like that. They want to look through rosy tinted glasses in some ways and not picture those. But actually, it is sometimes helpful to be able to mentally, well, not sometimes, it is helpful to mentally prepare yourself for those setbacks and try and work out how you're going to pull yourself through them.
I mean, it's also the fear of the unknown. Like, what's behind that barrier? Do you know what I mean? But that's actually the trick of the mind as well. Like, I don't know if you've listened to any of Tim Grosvenor. I don't know how you pronounce his name. It's Michael Jordan's trainer.
Okay, I haven't. I'll make a note of that.
I was recently listening to his audiobook, Winning. I think I've read it as well. And he talks about like the mind being in battle all the time. And if there's certain like explosives going off, it's sort of creating like fog and you can't see clearly. But it's actually your own mind that's setting off all of these missiles that's creating the fog. So if you're mindful enough to calm the mind down, you will be able to see clearly and you'll recognise that it's just your own brain doing all of the overthinking, creating all of the fear and doubts.
Say hello to your dog there in the background.
That's my neighbours, actually.
The neighbours, it right? Yeah, it's okay. You mentioned the word mindful there, and I think you've mentioned it 2 or 3 times now. I'm curious. I'm guessing you've used that in your life with some struggles that you've had.
Oh, I have to use it every day. I live my life not knowing what I'm doing tomorrow, believe it or not. Well, not always, but most of the time. I don't know, just the situation that I had especially with Sunderland last year, in the season that I've had, you never know what frame of mind you're going to be in tomorrow. So why are you even thinking about tomorrow? Do you know what I mean? There's new perceptions come and go sometimes within 5 minutes. I mean, I've been in situations where I've been abroad and I've looked at the scenery and I've been like, wow, this is amazing. But then something's happened to make me think, I hate this place. Like, why am I here? Like the situation with Lugano, like when I wasn't getting paid because they breached my contract. And it's like, your mind plays tricks on you all the time. And it's the emotion that causes the tricks. So if you're calm, if you try to stay calm and just settle the emotion down and not let that emotion change your perception of what's actually going on. So yeah, it's been very helpful for me to use mindfulness.
Yeah, you mentioned just before you spoke there was about distancing your thoughts in effect. And as you say, I mean, I think a lot of people, when they are thinking or in, say, overthinking mode, I suppose I think their thoughts are reality, don't they? But actually, if you can just go with the attitude of a thought, that's all it is a thought, then that can be really helpful. So I'm curious, how long have you been interested in mindfulness?
Probably since lockdown. Basically, I don't know if you know, but we were unbeaten the season before COVID for Sunderland and ready to get promoted. And I was building a coaching business. And that hit me really hard when COVID came. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to turn it into a positive and I'm going to just train every day and I'm going to be prepared for whatever's to come. Because I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if we're going to go back into the season with Sunderland. I don't know if I'm going to have to look for other opportunities. But just take it day by day. So I used to track my own wellness on a daily basis, from sleep, mood, energy, stress. And you'll notice that they're all linked together. If you're monitoring your stress levels, it'll impact your mood or whatnot. So from lockdown, I just used to do that, and I used to listen to podcasts. I used to read books, and I used to force myself to do everything that I would be doing was to live in that moment. Because obviously we were living in the unknown. We didn't know what was going to happen. So I used COVID as an opportunity to teach myself to live in the present. And ever since then, it's been really helpful to get past barriers, be in situations like I am now, where I'm waiting to see what club I'm going to be at next. When the situation in Lugano, when I didn't know if I was going to actually get my salary or if I was going to have to take action. And I'm glad I've learned to deal with it like this, because I've spoke to you about my childhood traumas now, and you learn that being impatient is actually just a result of trauma.
Yeah.
So I've had to learn mindfulness, because if I took my lifestyle from the past, from my childhood, into the football world now, I wouldn't be able to cope in the football world.
It is. It's so easy to get stuck, isn't it, in past thinking, where you don't even throw yourself in a comparison mode with previous self a year or two ago, or other people, and then I suppose again likewise getting the future thinking, where you end up spending so much time worrying about what might happen in a month's time or a year's time. It is so powerful, yet so difficult as well as to put into practice.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just like a switch where you all of a sudden you learn. I practice it daily, and I've got to. I mean, and talk about mindfulness, even just being self-aware and recognizing when you're not actually being mindful, that's still being mindful.
Yeah, and not beating yourself up for not being mindful at the same time when you do it. Yeah. So yeah, okay, right. I'm not being mindful. Fine, I'm human. That's cool. Again, that can be a tricky one. It's funny how our difficulties that we have in our life can really build our mental toughness, our resilience, and teach us so many different lessons.
Absolutely, and I mean, I used to. When I was younger, and I mean, a lot of people comment on my face in photos of playing football, and I do look aggressive when I play. I don't always see that as a bad thing, though, because I think you do need some sort of ego when you play. I do also agree that I used to feel hard done by, sort of feeling hard done by. So obviously I used to look like I had an ego when I was playing, which can be beneficial. But at the same time, when you're recognising that if you feel hard done by your past experiences, if you turn it around and actually use it as a positive, because that's what's taught me my self-awareness. That's what's taught me to empathise with other people, to be able to understand that everyone's got problems, but it does take a lot of practice.
I suppose what it helps there is, as you say, if you harness in the right direction, it can help with your motivation, like the types of goals that you go on to set yourself. At the same time, if you don't have that self-awareness, it can probably destroy you as well, or certainly send you up a very different path.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, only you know, only you know your truth as well. And if you use that truth for your goal setting and for your ambition, it gives you a direction in life.
Are you someone who journals at all, writes things down?
I do, yes. I have to. If I write my thoughts down, it helps me see things a lot clearer.
Yeah, that's similar to mindfulness in some ways, isn't it? Where it's a skill which you can develop over time, and it takes discipline ultimately.
Mm-hmm.
Today's world with technology, it's easy just to put the pen and the paper to one side and not do it. But it's a big help.
Do you know what though? I do use it on my notes on my phone.
Right.
Because what can happen then is, if you use it on your phone, it can then turn into conversations with other people. So for example, if you've got close people who aren't going to judge you for your emotions and for how you're feeling and what you've done, it can allow you to understand your behaviours a lot more, especially people that you've developed trust with.
Yeah.
So say if I journal on my phone, the next day it'll turn into texting conversation with someone who I've got a lot of trust with,
right?
Like a mentor. And that's been very beneficial for me.
Yeah, obviously we've talked a lot about self-awareness, emotions, thoughts, and it's been quite deep in parts, I suppose, this episode. Do you feel the culture in football, in clubs, actually allows you to express yourself fully, express the emotions, or do you have to hold back a little bit?
Sometimes I will hold back, but I much prefer it when I get a setting where I can express myself quite a lot, because I'm quite an expressive person when it comes to my emotions, and my personality is really big in the changing rooms. So if I get like an environment where I can't express myself, I don't always see it as that I can't. I sometimes see it as, are the other personalities big enough to be able to understand that I'm a big personality? Or are they on sort of like a journey to understanding themselves as well? So I usually find that when I can't express myself, it's usually because they're still busy trying to understand and learn themselves.
Yeah.
So I don't want to like come across as being like intimidating as such.
Yeah.
So then I will hold back.
It's that fine line, because I suppose ultimately you're there to try and get 3 points on a weekend, aren't you, or a midweek game, and it's about the collective goal essentially.
Yeah. Which is difficult when obviously your type of personality is something that's going to help pull the team together to bring them 3 points, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
I do need to have the sort of freedom to express myself, to be able to get others up to my energy.
Yeah. I suppose if you can't, then you've just got to find ways away from the football pitch, and with your family, friends to let it all out. In terms of like moving around and moving different clubs, and I suppose like fitting into new changing rooms, new dressing rooms, how do you find that? How have you found that experience in the past?
That's interesting, to be honest, because obviously this season I've went from Northeast, home for me, to Switzerland, which was like Italian speaking, and then to Canada. So 3 completely different cultures. Home was like, I had the freedom to just be myself completely. It was lovely. Going over to Switzerland, Italian, it sort of took me back to, I had a partner who was profoundly deaf, and I was sort of like living in a silent world and using emotional intelligence and visualizing everything to understand situations. And I had to do that because I couldn't understand the language. I had to just watch and visualize things. But it was still very beneficial because with me being expressive, I could use like hand gestures and face expressions to put myself into that culture and adapt. So that was a good challenge. Canada, however, was a little bit different because obviously they do speak English, but the culture was so different. So different. Very laid back people. Very kind. I almost sort of had to like calm down a lot and sort of fit in with their culture rather than trying to like them to come to my energy levels.
It must have been difficult trying to carry out coaches' instructions in Switzerland if you didn't speak the same language. Or did the coach speak English as well?
We had an English teammate who used to translate because we had quite a few people who spoke different languages but not Italian. Okay. But he understood English. Honestly, like I'm quite a visual person anyway, so it didn't really impact me too much.
Yeah. Be frustrating for the coach, I can imagine, at times, so trying to get messages out there.
Yeah, I can imagine. I could put myself in the coach's shoes and think this must be crazy. Honestly, the worst part was in Switzerland was when you had all the politics to deal with and the communication side off the pitch, where everything had to be translated on your phone. But I mean, that's something that's not new to me anyways, because like I said, with my profoundly deaf boyfriend, I never knew sign language to begin with. Mm-hmm. So I had the patience to be able to like just use text as communication.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because you get to see if there is a problem comes and there's a lack of patience on not just my end but their end, how do they deal with the frustration of not being able to communicate? It's like a baby, isn't it? If a baby can't communicate, what do they do? Have a tantrum. So I did actually witness some tantrums, believe it or not.
Well, we'll not go there. I'm just thinking about my kids and tantrums. So what does the future hold for you? I know obviously now you're searching for a new club right now, aren't you? And to get back to playing properly. So what's the future hold?
Do you know what? Honestly, I'm looking to put this past year of adversity into use because I've developed a hell of a lot of resilience, mental toughness, and lessons from it. So hopefully, I want to settle long term at a club somewhere. But I do aspire to obviously play at the top level. So wherever that may be, I'm not sure yet.
Time will tell. Further down the track, you've got that interest in coaching as well, haven't you? Is that right?
Yeah, I would like to go into management, to be honest. I mean, all of my life experiences and are bound to come useful at some point in my life, hopefully.
Yeah, that's a way away though.
And I almost see my playing career as not being like the success of my life, to be honest. I sort of see that my playing career is the lessons that I'm going to take into coaching and hopefully management.
That's a good way just to transition into 3 takeaways for the listeners then. So what are those lessons that them 3 lessons that you'll take into coaching or management?
Mindfulness is an ongoing process. I like the high performance podcasts, by the way, so I'm going to use one of the things that they always talk about on that, empathy over opinion. Always try to place yourself in the other person's shoes and empathise rather than having an opinion, because generally you will never understand what that person is feeling or what they've been through. So just try to understand.
It's a big skill for a coach, that is, rather than, as you say, just making instant judgments, is actually asking some damn good questions to find out what's going on inside someone's head.
Yeah, and that was only 2, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Number 3, encourage people to be more self-aware and build in character, because from that you'll have a lot less fear and doubt, and fear and doubt is the only thing that gets in the way of you moving forward. I again completely agree with that one. The self-awareness piece is so vital. Not everybody's going to be massively confident or resilient, mentally tough, whatever the words you bandy about. But if they know what traps they fall into, then they can help themselves at least try and overcome that and perform better and be happier as well. Yeah, absolutely. And happiness is an ultimate life goal.
Most definitely. So should the listeners want to catch up with you, get in touch with you, where can they find you?
I am on Twitter, Instagram and LinkedIn. LinkedIn, Charlotte Potts. Twitter is charlotte.potts23 and Twitter is Charlotte with 2 E's 23.
Brilliant. I'll pop those in the show notes. And a big thank you for your time today.
No problem at all. I appreciate you having me on.
A big thank you to Charlotte there for her wisdom. I'm going to pick up on one part of the conversation where we discussed mindfulness. This really resonated with me from a personal standpoint and a sporting standpoint too. I came across mindfulness about 10 years ago through my wife, who's a counselling psychologist. She put me on to Jon Kabat-Zinn's work, so I read an awful lot about Jon Kabat-Zinn and his work, and then she went on to complete an 8-week mindfulness practitioner course, which I did unofficially alongside her. And I found doing the course and reading the books hugely helpful. I've then been on various different workshops and day retreats, which really, really help to relax and unwind you, although they can be very uncomfortable as well. I'll give you a little bit of an insight into one of them. So we turned up at 10 o'clock and we left at 4, and there's about 20 people in the room, and we weren't allowed to talk to each other whatsoever. We had to be completely mindful and did a whole range of different activities during the day. Believe me, it was pretty tough to go through 6 hours and not talk to someone when there are people in the room. Anyway, so the mindfulness principles I use on a day-to-day basis today, and they do help me with my life. And on the golf course, I use them too. So what I notice, certainly in my life, it helps me slow down a little bit. It helps me accept the days when I don't feel great, when I'm not highly motivated. I don't get so self-critical. And on the golf course, personally, if I make a mistake, I don't dwell on them anymore. And also, a tendency of mine was to get too fast when I was doing really, really well. I get too excited. Again, I feel like I've got a handle on that because of the mindfulness tools. They really do help you remain composed. They can help you get into more of a flow state. Really, I can't praise the work of Jon Kabat-Zinn and different mindfulness gurus, if you like, out there. It's fantastic, and really, you should do some reading if you're unsure about the topic. And what I would say is I would actually make it a way of life, because I really, really do personally see the benefits. But also, if you look at evidence-based research, the research out there is amazing. It's fantastic. And if you want to live a more fulfilling life, and I'm not going to say a stress-free life, because let's face it, life does throw challenges and setbacks and obstacles at us. It's a great way to be able to handle the stressors of life. And when it comes down to the sports person who goes on to use it on a regular basis, what I do notice is that they tend to trust their skills more. They start responding automatically. They start reacting rather than overanalyzing situations and complicating matters. Their approach is much simpler. So, as I said earlier, I've said a few times now, I do really advocate Jon Kabat-Zinn's work. I would check out his resources on the website there and his books. They make fantastic reading and are very, very insightful. One last thing. Last week, I mentioned that I've recently started a Conversation with Kids campaign. So this is a weekly email, and you can also get access via the Sports Psychology Hub, a Facebook group that I've got. Ultimately, it's set up to promote better communication between children and their parents, and also to find alternative ways to help bit by bit improve their levels of mental strength and emotional flexibility. Again, the link is in the show notes. Have a fantastic week ahead. If you enjoyed this episode of the Demystifying Mental Toughness podcast with David Charlton, do check out my website, sport-excellence.co.uk, and my online sports psychology resources. The Sport Excellence website has essential resources for anyone looking to build their own mental toughness or the mental toughness of their athletes or teams, or if you want to achieve peak performance more often or optimal functioning. The Sport Excellence website has everything you need to keep moving forward and thrive. So go on, head over to sport-excellence.co.uk to find out more.